Hello and welcome to my channel. It's a bit of a sidetrack today, but I wanted to show you how you can run Alpine Linux with desktop environment in a virtual machine and also be able to access the desktop over VNC or through Apache Guacamole for that matter. I wanted to set up a couple lightweight virtual machines so that I could isolate my various internet endeavors. For example, I wanted to have a separate VM for my banking stuff, one for security research and ethical hacking, one for general use, and so on. I tested a lot of lightweight Linux distros out there, but I ended up liking the Alpine with XFCE and the VNC combo. I know a similar setup can be accomplished with containers, and I'll probably do another video on that, but for now, let's stick to the virtual machine. As a first step, we're going to have to download the Alpine Linux ISO. So we'll go ahead and in a browser type Alpine Linux ISO download and just select the alpinelinux.org. You'll see that this download page has a multitude of options. We will go ahead and select the virtual. We'll do the 64-bit. And I have already downloaded this ISO, so I'll skip that. Once we have the ISO downloaded, the next step is to create a virtual machine. We'll go to the whatever virtual machine software you're using, like VMware Workstation or VMware Player or VirtualBox. It should be a similar setup. We'll just go ahead and create a new virtual machine wizard. We're selecting the typical. Go ahead and select next. For the installer disk image file, you're going to have to select the location of the ISO that you just downloaded. So I've selected my Alpine Linux ISO here. To click next. For the operating system, we're going to select Linux and we'll do the 4x 64-bit. Go ahead and select next. Now we're just going to name this Alpine VNC and select the location where you want to save the ISO or the virtual machine. All right, I have selected the location. Click next. The disk size, this VM with full applications installed and whatnot turns out to be somewhere in between 1.5 and 2 gigs, which is kind of small if you ask me for a lightweight virtual machine with full-blown desktop. I'll just leave it to 8 gig. It's not going to consume the disk space right away, so just have that option to go up to 8 gig. I like to store the virtual disk as a single file that has a better performance compared to the multiple files. If you do the multiple files, it makes it easier to move, but the performance can be degraded. Click next. For the memory, by default it selects 768 megs of RAM. Let's try with 1024, which is 1 gigs of RAM. Close, finish. I will go ahead and power this virtual machine on. It just boots up from the ISO and then gives you the login prompt. You just log in with the root user, and that's it. So it's actually running kind of live at this point. The next step is to set up Alpine. So we'll type setup-alpine, select the keyboard layout, US, and it is asking for the host name. I could just say Alpine-VNC. And it asks you which interface do you want to initialize, ATH0 in this example. IP address, I'll just select the DHCP. You don't have to type. The whatever option is inside the brackets is the one that's going to be the default if you press enter. So we don't want any manual configuration. So I'm just going to press enter. Now it gets the IP address from the DHCP. Create a new root password. That's that. Now it is asking for the time zone, MST for me, no proxy here. For the NTP client, Crony is good. Starts the Crony daemon. Now it's asking to select the mirror. We'll just say, if you look at the option F, it says detect and add fastest mirror from above list. So I'll do that option. So that's going to be F. And it'll just, check the round trip time with the every single link, and then it'll select the fastest mirrors. Now it is asking which open SSH or which SSH server do we want to use. The couple options are the open SSH or the drop beer. We want to go with the open SSH, which is the selected option here. So I'll just press enter. And now it is asking which disk do you want to use. The disk available are SDA, which is the one that we created. So we'll just go ahead and say SDA. How would you like to use it? So there are sys, data, LVM options. So in order to do the permanent, we're not doing just the live version of this. We're going to actually create a persistent installation of the Alpine Linux. So we have to select sys. And it is asking us to make sure that we know what we are doing and erase the above disks. Yes, go for it. As you can see, the installation is complete, and now it's time to reboot. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, the machine is back up. Log in and clear the screen. Now that we have the Alpine Linux installed into the disk and we are logged in as root, the first step is to add a package called sudo, which allows you to create users that can switch to root and perform tasks as root user. So we'll say apk add sudo. So now the sudo is installed. We're going to create our first user account. I like to do it this way. So we'll create a variable called user, export user. For example, let's say Amit. And then we are going to do add user -d, $user, and echo $user. I'll explain this in a bit. All equals all. No pass wd all. Let's see sudoers.d $user and switch mode 0440. Let's see sudoers /$ sudoers.d /$user. So what we are essentially doing is we are creating a new user, and we are adding that user to the sudoers file and telling the sudoers file that this user is able to do everything without password. You can change it so that the user still requires password to run the sudo commands. Okay, that's that. If you wanted to, vi sudo, let's go in there. There are examples, right? So this is the example without the user having to type the password. This is an example with the user, but requiring the password, right? So all you have to do is remove that no pass wd from this option. So here you just remove the no pass WD colon in order to create the user that has the sudo privilege but with the password option. So now with that, and then we just create a file in the sudoers.d directory, change the permissions, and that's it. Now the next step is we are going to go into the repositories configuration in the repositories here and enable the community repository. Once we make a change to the repositories file, you do the apk update. So it just rebuilds the index and whatnot. Then we are going to run setup-xorg-base and then XFCE4 and then the XFCE4-terminal. LightDM is going to be our display manager. Richard, XFCE4-screensaver. And then dbus-x11. We've already done the sudo, but I'll just do it anyways. So this installs all the packages that are necessary to run the graphical interface. By the way, I'm going to link to my blog, which has the text version of this video so that you can copy and paste the commands and then follow along at your own pace. So that is complete. I have encountered an issue with the network interface on the Alpine Linux. When I reboot, the interface doesn't come back up, the Ethernet 0. So let's try to see how to fix that and also, what the problem actually looks like. Okay, the box is rebooted. Got that. If you look at this, so we don't have the interface EDH0. Look at that. It's there. If I restart the networking, then it'll work, but I wanted to, fix that, right? So in order to fix that, apparently what we have to do is in the conf.d networking, you know what, the file doesn't exist, but we can do is rc_need udev-settle. So what this does is it tells the, before the interface actually tries to start and fails, it needs to have the udev to settle down. That way the device is there when the networking tries to start. Otherwise, the networking tries to start, but the car device isn't there, and so it fails, right? So we will reboot the box now, and we should have the interface come back up as normal. You see, this is where it would have failed before, but this time we see that it obtained the IP address. Let me log in. Clear my screen so that you can see it, and you can see that there is the IP address there. Okay. Just move on. We already did the xorg based setup, so now we're going to do apk add xf86-video-vmware. We're also going to do the xf86 input-mouse and the keyboard. Now we run the xorg-configure. Once we do that, we are going to copy the newly created xorg.conf file to etc x11 and xorg.conf. Once we do that, we're going to say rc-service. You know what? Before we start the graphical interface, let's just go ahead and rc-update add lightdm so that it starts with boot, and then apk add openvm-tools open-vm-tools-gtk. So this will add the OpenVM tools, right? So it's just like installing the VMware tools. Now let's just add some Finja icon theme. Okay. I mean, this Finja icon theme is not necessary, but then the next thing is we also want to make sure that the OpenVM tools start at boot. And now we're ready to start the graphical interface. We already added the lightdm to the boot, which what it says. Now let's do start that lightdm start. And did I create the password for that user? I didn't. So let me log in as root. This is the graphical interface. Let me change the password for the user we created. Okay, that's that. Now I can log off, log out, and log in as the user. So now I'm logged in as the user Amit. This is how you can get the graphical interface on the Alpine Linux. And next we're going to set up the VNC access. I'm just going to log in using the PuTTY. Going to log in as the user. Oops, I think I typed the wrong password. All right, so here I am. So now I can sudo to root. In order to install, oh, by the way, you can now install tools like, Chromium, which is the Chrome browser, as well as the Firefox. So apk add Chromium, install the Chrome browser or the Chromium, and then the Firefox-ESR installs the Firefox browser. And might as well add the apk add Firefox-ESR. Okay, so the Firefox ESR is also complete. Now, if we cancel that and go, oh, you can't see that, can you? All right, close that tab. I was showing this thing here. So here's the panel menu, and when you click on this, the Firefox opens up, right? And you can always go to the applications menu here, and from here you can do the web browser, or you can select so this is the Chromium browser. All right, anyways, back to the PuTTY interface here. Let's move forward with installing the VNC. In order to install VNC, we're going to say apk add nocas ca-certificates. We're going to do curl openSSL sudo again, and we know that it's already installed. X11 VNC, XFCE 4, and that's icon, that's theme. We've already installed that, and BAS. So whatever is already installed, it's not going to reinstall. So it installed a bunch of things. Next, we have two options. You can create a local VNC user and use the VNC authentication, or you can use the display manager authentication. I prefer the display manager authentication. In my blog post, where I will link that in the description, I will put the option to do the VNC authentication. You just have to create a user and create the VNC password file. But for this tutorial, we're going to do the display manager authentication so that the authentication is handled by the display manager or the greeter. So if we do the logout here, log out, this is the display manager authentication, right? So we just want to leave that to the display manager, at least for this video. In order to do that, what we will do is we will create a VNC start script in the etc local.d and vnc.start. In order to use this local script though, we have to rc update add local default. So this means that the local is added to their default run label so that all the .start scripts in that folder are executed at boot. Now we will create the start script local.d and then start. Oops, sorry. Slash vnc.start. Now this is going to be a shell script bin as such. And what we will do is no hop. We don't want it to shut down. So bin xvfb. And we are issuing display on column 99 so that it doesn't conflict with anything else. Say screen 0, and now we specify the resolution. This is up to you what resolution you want. Here I'm doing the 1920 by 1080 by 24. That's AC plus extension, GLX plus render, and then no reset. You can pipe that to a log file if you want, var log xvfb.log, and we're going to redirect all the errors as well as the standard output and then run that in the background with the ampersand at the end. Then we start the actual X11 VNC, XKB, no X record, no fixes. Then we're saying Nox damage. You can learn more about these options by just looking at the X11 VNC man page. Display, we are going to do that to the... Actually, you know what? I don't even think we need to start that because that was me doing it before I even started the graphical interface. So that would be useful for the headless ones. We'll talk about that later. And we're going to say loop shared forever, run the background. Auth is going to be var run light dm / root colon 0 and rfb port 5900. This defines what port. And we are going to say the output the log to var log vnc.log dev null to %1 %. That's it. chmod plus x etc local.d vnc.start. Okay, now let's go ahead and reboot. Then we will, once this machine is back up, we will then go into the we will then try to connect it with the XVNC viewer. Okay, the thing is back up here. Let me go here. I have an Ultra VNC viewer installed. Let me get the IP address. Actually, let me get the IP address. All right. 233.130. 233.130. Connect. Okay, it says failed to connect to the server. So let's go ahead and check here. Stand -2 pan, group -I list. Okay, looks like the VNC didn't start. var log vnc.log log vnc.log. It looks like it did. All right. Go. Let me just log into this. It's just so easier. Oh, I made a typo here. This is supposed to be :0 and not the display colon. So the VNC was looking for the display option. If you look at the vnc.log here, it says that XOpenDSP failed, no display or display. So that was the problem. Let's go ahead and reboot and hopefully it'll work. Okay, without logging in, we are going to open the, if you want to see it here, I have the Ultra VNC viewer. And there you go. We have the Alpine VNC, and this is the VNC viewer. And I can log in. And now I'm logged into the Alpine Linux with the VNC. So now if you have the Apache Guacamole, you can configure the Guacamole to use this VNC credentials or VNC configuration to be able to access the Alpine Linux. So that's it for this video tutorial. Now you can also customize this to, you can install the Windows 10 looking theme and all that. So it's really very lightweight and, awesome, fast virtual machine for isolating various internet browsing behaviors. So if I look in here, this is google.com, and it's pretty fast enough to do the browsing and some light work. And let's see what the final size of the virtual machine is. The final size is 2 gigs. So in 2 gigs, you have, with just 1 gig of RAM and 2 gig of disk space, you actually have a full-blown GUI-based operating system to separate out your internet activities. I hope this video was useful. Let me know. Feedback, comments are always appreciated. If you guys like this video, please like, share, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.